Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Everyone, hey, welcome into the program. So today on the show, we have computer and technology news for both segments, and we have everything from the latest announcements from the NVIDIA presentation. If you didn't catch those, then hey, this would be a great show for you. We also have some stories out from Microsoft and one of their record acquisitions, looking at a $20 billion acquisition of an artificial speech company, Nuance. We have that and more, everything that you want to hear about in the world of tech. Hey, we got it here for you. So before we get started though, computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find past shows, future shows, all the shows as we, kind of get talking here. And we have a ton to discuss. But if you want to find out anything that we do, computeramerica.com. That will have past shows, future shows, articles, reviews, links to social media, and of course, links to the podcast as well. If you can't catch us on IRN, then hey, you can catch us on the podcast. So with all that being said, everyone, once again, welcome into the show. Why don't we go ahead and just get right to it with computer and technology news brought to you by Computer America. If that hadn't froze, there we go. Perfect. So all that being said, I think we're actually going to make our first story one that, you just don't really hear all that often. Now, obviously, attacking infrastructure is nothing new for people who are deranged and, partially psychotic. And it looks like there was someone who was trying to blow up the internet. And I think to a lot of people out there, blowing up the internet sounds like a completely ridiculous idea because, hey, we have been driven, it's been driven into our heads so often that the internet is the cloud. It's a very ethereal thing. It's not something that is physically there. So how do you physically blow up the internet? Well, this gentleman had a plan, and he was hoping to take about 70% of the internet with him. So check this out. A Texas man, yes, oddly enough, not Florida. I know, all of you are thinking it, but no, Texas. They say that federal investigators, the FBI, allege that a Texas man wanted to use C4 to blow up 70% of the internet. This is coming to us from Motherboard, Mr. Matthew Galt, and FBI agents in Texas have arrested Seth Aaron Penley for an alleged plot to blow up an Amazon data center in Virginia with the goal of taking down the internet. Now, to be fair, before we go any further, yes, it's crazy, insane. Blowing up an Amazon data server is not the end of the internet, but, hey, it's a pretty big part. And the part that I wanted to add to it was that think about when Amazon Web Services went down that one fateful day about a year and a half ago. entire industries, were gridlocked. You had airlines that you had airplanes that couldn't leave, that couldn't leave the airport. You had, online services like shopping and, so on and so forth that weren't working. You had payment terminals all over the country not working because of Amazon Web Services going down for just a matter of hours. The internet, when something messes up, there are real big consequences. And that's just like, a glitch, someone set a setting wrong, networking is a very complicated thing. Hey, you have problems. But to physically destroy it, you would do some serious damage. So the FBI said that Mr. Penley allegedly told the undercover cop that he planned to attack web servers that he believed provided services to the FBI, CIA, and other federal agencies. Well, check this one out. Let's see. And actually, this is way down here. There we go. Okay. So with that being said, they allegedly told the undercover cop that he was planning on blowing up the services again that the FBI, CIA, and other federal agencies were going to use. He said that he had hoped to bring down the oligarchy currently in power in the United States. Now, yes, that is insane. Could it happen if he had actually blown these up? He could have taken down their websites. To actually take down the organizations, probably a stretch too far, but he could have taken a lot of the infrastructure out. Now, according to the Department of Justice, federal authorities learned of his plot after one of his friends warned them. So this guy was, thankfully, a lot of criminals like this are very stupid. So, that's a very good thing. Ran his mouth, told his friends what he was going to do, and of course tipped him off to the authorities, which is great. They said that he was allegedly active on a website, and I'm not going to say it to promote it, but it's a website where extremists gather to socialize and plot, where feds say he boasted about his plans. Obviously, these things don't happen by themselves, obviously an echo chamber, and hey, you build until suddenly something like this seems completely reasonable to do. And according to the DOJ, he began talking over his plans with an FBI informant via Signal in late January, saying that the source told the FBI that Mr. Penley allegedly stated he planned to use C4 plastic explosives to attack prominent tech company data centers in an attempt to kill about 70% of the internet. Now, to say that any one place is 70% of the internet is very, very false. But it would put a massive crippling blow to the internet. Not 70%, but yeah, that's what he said. And they mentioned that, we would like to thank the FBI for their work on the investigation. We take the safety and security of our staff and customers' data incredibly seriously. This is a spokesperson from Amazon Web Services to obviously everyone. And they mentioned that we will continue to retain this vigilance about our employees and our customers. Clearly, it would have taken a lot. And if you've never been in a data center, which the majority of people have not, data centers are very secure. They don't allow a lot of people because, even just dirt in general can compromise these facilities. So they're very clean. They're very, they're very sensitive to who comes in the facility at all, let alone, just random strangers. And to actually breach one of these facilities, this gentleman would have had to breach multiple layers of security. So they mentioned that if the court finds Penley guilty, he could face up to 20 years in federal prison. 20 years seems a little light for trying to dismantle our organizations as we know it. But hey, there you go. They mentioned that if it had worked, would not have knocked out around 70% of the internet. So, hey, the headline on this a little misleading, but again, that's what he thought. He said that the Amazon Web Services data places are almost all centrally located. He said, according to the criminal complaint against him, saying that they are massive. I haven't got all the details worked out. So again, those were his words, saying that if he knocked out one Amazon Web Server, one AWS data center, it would have knocked out 70%. I think he was probably basing his assumptions on, let's see, how much traffic does Amazon Web Service handle of the internet? And they mentioned that Amazon servers handle 1% of all consumer internet traffic, and according to this, about 32% as of 2020, obviously has grown since then. You have about 32% of all internet traffic being handled by Amazon Web Services. By the way, fun fact: Azure 17.6% and Google Cloud at 6%, with various other services and countries handling the rest of the internet. So I would say about, looking at the numbers here, about 60% of the internet is handled by our big tech companies and everything else by, other organizations. So I don't know where he got his numbers from, but obviously he wasn't thinking too clearly. Data centers and other pieces of the internet's physical infrastructure and guarded and distributed across the world. It might slow things down for a bit. That's the author of the Networks of New York. They said that whether it actually destroyed or erased any information seems pretty unlikely because there are enough data centers, there are enough data centers and enough and backed up enough that in theory that probably would never be a major concern. Now, to assume that backups are 100% perfect is probably flawed. Some data would have been lost, undoubtedly, but to actually think that this guy's plan was ever going to be good, highly doubtful. So, by the way, looking at the article here, something that I skipped over. They mentioned that a user went by the screen name Dionysus, stating that he planned to conduct a little experiment that he would draw a lot of heat and could be dangerous. So a lot of, kind of speaking in euphemisms. And when another user asked what outcome he desired, he responded, well, death. So, this guy's not a good guy. And he mentioned that in the investigation, they quickly figured out that this user who posed, I'm assuming anonymously, but the FBI were able, or at least the Department of Justice, quickly found out it was Penley and began to search his social media feeds, saying in private messages, so keep this in mind, private doesn't necessarily mean private. In private feeds, he allegedly told friends that although he did not actually enter the Capitol building, he did reach the platform where he swiped a piece of glass from a broken window and interacted with police. He said he brought a sawed-off AR rifle to DC, but left the weapon in his car during the Capitol riots. So someone who was actually at the January 6th riots. Fun. This is just conspiracy after conspiracy. And, some conspiracy theories can be fun. They're harmless, Bigfoot, aliens, what have you. But when they get to this point, they are extremely dangerous. So I'm glad that the intelligence agencies were able to find him, catch him, and get him before anything too serious happened. Because I guarantee you, those random data center workers probably were not part of any kind of deep state craziness. But still, the whole thing was downright absurd. Now, with that being said, let's go ahead and continue on here. Let's talk about NVIDIA. We'll group all the NVIDIA stories together, and then we'll move on to another topic. But first things first, NVIDIA, and honestly, something that's been happening here in the background, which is cars don't have the computer chips that they need to actually be produced. So there's actually a vehicle shortage. Companies from Ford, Nissan, Hyundai, all of them have had to cut back production of their cars because they don't have the silicon that they need to actually make cars. Well, NVIDIA is looking to, in a couple of years, maybe they are going to be the ones to be in cars and, hey, actually support them. This is cool, though. This is something that if you've been to CES and you've seen NVIDIA and their aspirations, they are very much in the car business, which I guess would surprise a few people. But NVIDIA, their Drive Atlan chip is headed to cars in 2025, which is super cool because, first of all, again, we need more chips, and second of all, we need better chips to power things like self-driving and more. Now, while we still have to wait until next year to see the NVIDIA's Orion chips start making its way into consumer cars, the company is already working on its next-generation drive processors. They mentioned in 2025, cars will have access to the Atlan, A-T-L-A-N, Atlan, NVIDIA chips. And since it's so far out, the company didn't share too many details about its chipset, but what it did say is that it will feature its next-gen GPU architecture and new ARM CPU cores. And also, it will include a Bluefield data processing unit, which NVIDIA says will assist the chip in completing complex AI workloads for autonomous vehicles. So again, they're hoping that cars are packed full of NVIDIA chips to be automated. Clearly a huge industry that NVIDIA wants to capture. Now, those separate parts will come together in a chip that will deliver data center-like performance, so they claim, that is capable of 1,000 trillion operations per second. So to put that into perspective, Orin, which is the predecessor, can complete 254 trillion operations per second. So what they're currently sending out, this thing will be 4 times as capable, or at least complete 4 times as many operations per second than their current line of chips. Very, very cool. Now, according to NVIDIA, all that power will allow automakers to build software-defined vehicles that they'll be able to upgrade in perpetuity with the help of over-the-air updates. And to help make those updates easier, Atlan will use the same CUDA and TensorRT APIs as its existing drive chips. So what they're saying is, probably what's going to happen is that their current generation of cars, 254 trillion operations per second, very, very good. And it's going to do a lot of the automation that we kind of need today. But they're hoping that the new Atlan chips are so much more capable that, and this is a problem that, even Teslas have, where, let's say, their graphics cards are only good for like 5 years. People obviously drive their cars for longer than 5 years. It's not a phone, it's not a tablet, it's not a computer, it's a car. It needs to be on the road for 20, 30 years, 15, 20, 30 years, however long you keep your car for. Software doesn't really work that way. I mean, whenever we see 20-year-old hardware, we kind of go, wow, what part of the healthcare sector are you in? 20-year-old hardware is not good. NVIDIA is trying to future-proof at least this part of a car's performance, and through over-the-air updates, so you don't have to plug your car and you just pull it in. If there's any updates that need to happen, if there's, better self-driving software, if there's better image processing software, if there's better this, that, or the other, they're hoping that these chips will at least last the cars the lifespan of the car, instead of having to be brought in, swapped out with new hardware, which will be very costly, very expensive, or maybe even downright impossible, depending on the model of the car. They're hoping that this new chipset lasts the car the full duration of the car, which is a very, very good ideal to kind of stick to, because clearly a car can only last as long as its parts last. And hey, there's a reason why some people are really happy with their 1938 Ford pickup. Because it's simple and just works. The more complicated these things get, the faster certain parts of it are going to break, and yeah, you're going to have to fix them. So NVIDIA, very cool. Love to see that. Our next story, also from NVIDIA, not so much the consumer space, but from the workstation space. And for those who don't know exactly what a workstation is, obviously, maybe Darius Derekshani could tell it better, but yeah, a workstation is where you do work. It's where, I don't know, you're saying, wow, that's incredible, Ben, but it's where you process music. It's where you, make videos. It's where you pretty much use 100% of your processor and your graphics card to, render 3D, 3D images, or, do any number of things, including things like AI speech and so on and so forth. There's a lot that a workstation can do, and whenever you have an upgrade, whenever something is the new best workstation hardware, that means performance. And to the average consumer, it's like, well, I could just wait 30 minutes. But when you are bottlenecked by the amount of money that you can make, by how long it takes to actually get something rendered or, kind of finished, these upgrades mean money. Now, of course, the flip side of that is, well, these things are going to be a pretty penny. I don't think we have actual pricing for these things yet, but these types of cards with, great redundancy and great throughput, these things usually run in the neighborhood of $2,000-$3,000 a piece. Sometimes, more than that. So this is not necessarily meant for the consumer space, but hey, it's NVIDIA's really showing off what they got here. Now, today at its GTC conference, NVIDIA announced its next round of professional-focused graphics cards based on the Ampere technology first seen with its RTX 30 series GPUs. So obviously 3080s, 3090s. They had this, now it's coming to the workstation. For desktops, there's the RTX A5000 and A4000 GPUs featuring 8,192 and 6,144 CUDA cores. Those GPUs top out at 24 gigs of GDDR6 memory. That's a lot of memory. And again, hugely important when it comes to, let's say, editing videos or things like that. They also mentioned that you can also connect two cards together over NVLink for up to 48 gigs of addressable memory, and NVIDIA's RTX 3090 GPU technically offers even faster speeds, but its professional hardware is typically built for stability over lengthy workloads. And that's the part where people may think, man, if I had all the money in the world, I would just buy the best graphics card, the most expensive graphics card. A fun fact, a 3090 would still probably be faster than than the A5000, but due to redundancies, if you need to make sure that every packet, every little bit of information, through a video or, anything else like that, every little bit of information gets delivered exactly how you mean it to. When you're playing video games, a drop frame here, some drop packets there, some data being lost in transmission, not the biggest deal in the world. But if you're doing something that is, extremely time consuming and, you really need to make sure that it's done correctly, the speeds are a little bit slower, but they're redundant. So everything gets captured exactly as you create it. So, just because this thing's going to be 2-3 times the price of a 3090, the speeds are going to be, maybe comparable as Mr. Hardware said, maybe a little bit slower, but they're going to be much more reliable, which, hey, if you're going to spend 48 hours rendering a video, you want to make sure that video is done the first time. You can't waste all that time doing it twice. So yeah, very, very stable and very good for its particular process. They mentioned that on the Pro laptop front, there's the A2000 to A5000 range, all of which are equipped with the company's latest Max-Q optimization. It'll be interesting to see how well NVIDIA's highest-end professional GPUs translate. They said that translate to notebooks on the consumer front, RTX 3080 isn't nearly as speedy as the desktop counterpart. NVIDIA is also releasing T1200 and T600 GPUs based on previous Turing hardware, which are focused on multitasking, and less so on heavy-duty graphics. NVIDIA also has new A10, A16 GPUs for data centers, which should pair nicely with the Grace ARM-based CPUs, which we'll talk about in just a second. So obviously, he wraps up by saying that you can expect to see NVIDIA's new pro-grade desktop GPUs in systems later this month, while laptops should be in the second quarter. So clearly from the on the consumer standpoint, they're still riding the 30 series. This is simply bringing the 30 series of hardware to the pro grade instead of the consumer grade. And it makes sense that, hey, making consumer grade stuff, it's, first of all, much more exciting. It's a lot more attention, but also it's easier because pro grade has to actually work 100% of the time. But, and by the way, looks very cool. I like that. I like the very sleek, simplistic design with the gold strip on it. So there you go. Ampere GPUs for everyone. And they are incredibly important. So there's that one, and I wanted to do one more NVIDIA one, again from Hardware, who does great reporting over at Engadget for their hardware. And yeah, NVIDIA's Grace, its first data center CPU, is another major threat to Intel, as he says. But essentially, this is NVIDIA making good on a promise to get more into the CPU space. They haven't really had a CPU consumer, kind of a consumer CPU, but they're going where the money is first, and then they can branch out from there. Now, Grace is something completely new, and hey, pretty cool. They're saying that it's an ARM-based x86 architecture, so it should slot in pretty easily. Instead of Intel, you would throw one of these in. And just like Apple did with its M1 chips, NVIDIA is taking on Intel directly with its own ARM-based CPU. But they said don't expect it in PCs anytime soon. They mentioned it's named after the computer scientist Grace Hopper, and Grace is NVIDIA's first data center CPU targeted at massive workloads like AI supercomputing and natural language processing. It makes perfect sense that NVIDIA would jump into this space because already you have your choice of either AMD or NVIDIA. If you want to make a supercomputer, you contract with one of them and you get thousands of GPUs, to kind of do this thing. And then you have to contract either Intel or AMD to handle the CPU side. So NVIDIA is already handling half the equation. They're jumping in on the other half to hopefully, break into a new market. So according to NVIDIA, a Grace-powered system is 10 times faster at training a natural language processing model with 1 trillion parameters compared to its x86 machines. Similar to Apple, NVIDIA may be hitting the limit of the current x86 hardware at this point, so the only choice is to take things into its own hands. Obviously, if you can make the hardware really optimized, and this is what Apple was hoping to do as well, if you can make all parts of the hardware, or at least, the handshake between the CPU and the GPU, if you can make that work super optimized with one another, then you are going to have a better performance ratio than Intel being compatible with everything and having to accept any other hardware from any other manufacturer. Great for NVIDIA. Intel obviously has some work to do. Although again, that's a completely different story. Intel does have some investments going, or at least should start some investments soon, that will catch it up to speed. But still, this is great for NVIDIA. Now, NVIDIA is now a 3-chip company, as they're kind of saying, coupled with GPU and DPU, which DPU is, if I had to check, let's see, DPU is, that is not at all, data processing unit, I think. So GPU, which is a graphics processing unit, CPU, which is a central processing unit, and then DPU, I guess, would be the data processing unit. If I have this right. So let's see, a DPU, new class of programmable processors, 3 elements. Yep, I'm going to say data processing, which is super good for handling massive amounts of data and essentially organizing it for the CPU and GPU to handle. Now, with that being said, Grace gives us a third foundational technology for computing and the ability to re-architect the data center to advance AI. AI is all the rage nowadays. It's where all the technology is focused on. It's where all the investment is. And we're going to cover after this story how Microsoft is even making a $20 billion gamble that, yes, that is where the future of technology lies. Now, Grace systems will rely heavily on NVIDIA's NVLink technology, which will be able to provide 900 gigabits per second speeds between their CPUs and GPUs. NVIDIA claims that that's around 30 times faster than leading servers today. And thanks to of course, NVIDIA LP DDR5X memory, Grace machines will be 10 times as energy efficient and offer twice the bandwidth of DDR4. So, yeah, they've definitely made some major improvements. So they also mentioned they have announced a partnership with Amazon Web Services to bring its GPUs together with Amazon Web Services ARM-based Graviton 2 processors. For those who, and they also mentioned for those who need to dip their toes into ARM-based high-performance computing, NVIDIA has also announced a developer kit as well. So clearly, NVIDIA is not waiting on Intel to catch up and kind of do its thing. A lot of other tech companies out there have seen the past couple of years where Intel has been lagging, and they are making switches to either Apple with their M1 architecture, NVIDIA with their architecture. ARM86 is clearly, taking over phones as well as a lot of other computers. No one seems to be waiting around for Intel anymore. They're taking this into their own hands. That does not mean that Intel is completely out of the fight. I mean, being at the cutting edge, yeah, there's a lot more competition at the very, very upper high ends of computing, but Intel still dominates, 85% of computers out there. So Intel can still catch up, but NVIDIA, Amazon, Apple, they're not waiting around. And hey, from a consumer, that's great. Faster computers, more competition. Who can hate that? Okay, so I promised this one, and this was one of the biggest stories of the day because, hey, $20 billion is switching hands, where Microsoft buys AI speech tech company Nuance for $19.7 billion. There you go. This is the second biggest acquisition next to LinkedIn. Yeah, you guessed that right. Now, they mentioned that Nuance is best known for Dragon. If you are familiar, Dragon is, of course, speech recognition software, which uses deep learning to transcribe speech and improve its accuracy over time by adapting to a user's voice. Nuance has licensed this tech for many services, including Apple's Siri. Though to what degree Siri currently relies on Dragon is unclear. Dragon is an industry leader in terms of transcription accuracy. Now, it is good, but I will say other companies have gotten very good as well. Now, Microsoft will pay $56 per share for Nuance, a 23% premium over the company's closing price last Friday. And they mentioned that the deal includes Nuance's net debt as well. So they're buying everything, the whole company, everything going over to Microsoft. Now, they say that it comes at a time when speech tech is improving rapidly thanks to deep learning boom in AI, and there are simultaneously more opportunities for its use. People are talking to their devices constantly. And for Microsoft, I wouldn't say that, obviously they had Cortana for a little while. They have backed off of Cortana, but the writing is on the wall. People are going to expect to be able to speak to their technology in the near future, and for the technology to do exactly what it is that they say. I think that the first operating system that can seamlessly do that, still be as usable as Windows 10, but also be able to listen and understand what a person says to their operating system, is going to be very, very well positioned. And Microsoft obviously wants that to be them. Now, they mentioned that the digital transcription has become more reliable in a range of settings, from medical consultants to board meetings and university lectures. The uptick in remote work has also created new opportunities, saying that with so many meetings taking place, it's easier to offer customers transcriptions via software integrated directly into these calls. For example, Zoom, for instance, offers automatic transcription via integration with third-party services like Otter. Microsoft has a lot of meetings and meeting software. They have that what is that new one? Let's see, I can Meet Now. They have Meet Now. They have Google Hangouts. They have a lot of other services that they use to actually get people talking, and built-in transcription services is going to be huge in that regard, but also just in general, they're going to want this kind of interaction with speech and understanding. They mentioned that for Microsoft, which makes roughly 2/3 of its revenue from enterprise software sales and cloud computing, improving its transcription services for scenarios like these makes complete sense. Obviously, the company could integrate Nuance's technology into existing software, and again, being a leader in the industry, Nuance would be an amazing tool for transcription in all of that. And then, of course, all the meetings that take place, Microsoft could provide Nuance, which it now owns, but it could provide Nuance with an incredible amount of data to improve its speech recognition as well. Now, the immediate focus, though, would be on healthcare, where the two companies have already worked together. In 2019, they announced a strategic partnership to use the software to digitize health records for Microsoft clients. Nuance's health tech, including Dragon Medical One platform, which is tuned to identify medical terminology, which is super important because, hey, here on the show, we use pretty basic English. But then when you start talking about specific diseases, diagnosis, medication, which can take, any number of forms of speech, that terminology that is used oh so rarely, but has to be super accurate. You can't, the AI can't just guess at what kind of medication the doctor just said. It has to know 100% of the time. And beyond that, kind of the dosage amounts and things like that. That's a super important thing to get right. And you can see where Dragon really excelled at that. And they mentioned that it's reportedly used by more than 500,000 physicians worldwide and in 77% of U.S. hospitals. They said that by augmenting the Microsoft Cloud for healthcare with Nuance's solutions, as well as the benefits of Nuance's expertise and relationships in the EHR system providers, Microsoft will be better able to empower healthcare providers through the power of ambient clinical intelligence and other Microsoft Cloud services. News of the Nuance acquisition were first reported over the weekend by Bloomberg, and it's the latest example of Microsoft purchasing spree. Last month, they purchased $7.5 billion worth of games companies. Last year, they considered an acquisition of TikTok, and the company is also reportedly in exclusive talks to purchase Discord. Discord. From the rumors that I've heard, Discord is 80% leaning towards filing publicly independently, and 20% selling to Discord, or Discord selling to Microsoft. It's not really on the fence. Odds are Discord's going to continue to be its own service, but it makes, again, complete sense why Microsoft, who has struggled with Skype and building up that user base, would purchase these companies with existing user bases. It doesn't always work. I mean, you can look at everything that happened with Mixer, but again, you can kind of see why Microsoft is throwing its weight around as this huge behemoth of a company and trying to buy services with existing communities. Makes sense. Okay, so there's Microsoft. We got through all the NVIDIA stuff. Just a quick update. I think this would really help a lot of people and help the United States as a whole. The FCC wants you to test your internet speeds using its new app, which is super important because data collection has actually been one of the biggest problems with, the internet in the United States. It's been very biased. It's been provided by the service providers who provide you internet, and obviously they're going to skew the numbers to make it look like they are providing the best possible speeds to the most amount of people through any kind of data fudging that they can muster. So for consumers to be able to take that directly to the FCC, I think is a great advancement, and it makes sense. If you have internet access, why can't you submit it yourself? Now, the FCC Speed Test App works similar to existing speed testing apps like Ookla and Fast by Netflix, automatically collecting and displaying data once a user press start and test button. According to the FCC, the data collected through the app will inform the agency's efforts to collect more accurate broadband speed information and aid its broadband deployment efforts. They're saying that to close the gap between digital haves and have-nots, we are working to build a comprehensive, user-friendly dataset on broadband availability. Expanding the base of consumers who use the FCC Speed Test app will enable us to provide improved coverage information to the public and add to the measurement tools we're developing to show where broadband is truly available in the United States. Remember, the way that you used to report, or at least these companies used to report internet speeds, is that they would block off neighborhoods in sections. And let's say those sections were 100, 500 homes, whatever it may be. If one home in those 500 homes had access to fiber, even though it was 1 out of 100 or 1 out of 500, the data reported was that all 500 of those homes had access to fiber. They would say that block A has access to fiber, even though only one home had access to that. That's why, hey, maybe sometimes neighbors down the street have access to incredible internet and you're stuck with DSL or something worse. It really does. To rely on the companies, again, that provide internet to provide the information to the regulatory committee that oversees them, they're going to make it look as good as they can. And they're going to fight every effort, as we saw during Ajit Pai's tenure. They're going to fight any effort to actually collect good information. Instead of house by house, which is completely possible nowadays, instead of house by house, they decided to keep the block by block kind of methodology, which needs to be changed. They said that the app is part of the agency's broader effort to collect more accurate broadband speeds across the country. The FCC's current coverage maps are built from self-reported data from internet providers like AT&T and Verizon, and in doing so, they've allowed the ISPs to exaggerate their current coverage, drawing heated criticism from broadband access advocates. Clearly, you want the most people getting broadband as possible, and if you are overlooked because the reporting the data just isn't granular enough to actually say who has data or who has broadband, who doesn't, better data benefits everyone. Well, everyone who's not an ISP that has to pay for, actually providing internet to those areas. But still, there you go. So we'll include a link to this article, and let's see, the new app, which is... by the way, you can actually submit your own form to the FCC right here. So, yeah, you can actually self-report your own internet access, and you can, of course, download the app yourself. Just look up FCC and, FCC Internet Speed App. But, hey, we'll include this in the show notes. Check out computeramerica.com. Okay, our next story, let's do something fun. These have been really tech-heavy articles. How about... All right, this one's fun enough. It's techy, and it's pizza. Nothing can go wrong here. Domino's is going to start autonomously sending you pizza, which is great if you live in Houston. So, Houston, Texas, congratulations. If you order a pizza from Domino's in Houston, a robot might drop off your dinner. The company will this week start making autonomous deliveries with the help of Neuro and their R2 robot, almost 2 years after it announced the project. And I remember those. The videos are pretty cool, and this thing, it's like half the size of a car. It's self-driving. It would pull up to the curb. It would keep your pizza on a warming shelf, and of course, one order per shelf, so people can't steal pizzas out of it. But then it would open up and obviously deliver your pizza. Domino says R2 is the first fully self-driving vehicle, on-road delivery vehicle to receive regulatory approval from the Department of Transportation. On certain days and times, folks who order from a Domino's location in Woodland Heights can choose to have R2 deliver their food. They can track the location via text alerts or on the order confirmation page, and Domino's will provide customers with a PIN, which they can punch in on R2's touchscreen to retrieve their order. So at least you don't need your phone or anything like that. You would just have to have access to that unique PIN. It's not just like facial recognition or you just walk up and anyone steals your pizza. No. If you've had pizza from Little Caesars lately, they do almost the exact same thing. And I would totally love to have my pizza delivered by this thing. I wonder if you still tip. Probably not, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. Robots are very undeserving of tips, it seems. Still, Dennis Maloney, Domino's Senior Vice President and Chief Innovation Officer, said in a statement that the company still had to learn much about the autonomous delivery space, saying that this program will allow us to better understand how customers respond to deliveries, how they interact with the robot, and how it affects store operations. Clearly, some of the bigger impacts are going to be, hopefully, faster delivery times, but less jobs, because delivery person, that job is going to be automated away. But of course, the question is, are people going to respond positively to this? Are they going to damage the machine? Are they going to be confused by the machine? Is it simple enough for the average pizza consumer? Which I have no idea what the IQ level of an average pizza consumer is, but are they going to be able to operate this thing quickly enough? Are there going to be any complaints? If there is an issue with the order, let's say someone put the wrong order in, how long does it take to fix as opposed to someone else? How do you get in touch with people on the other end? I mean, there's so much that they can learn from this very limited rollout. And hey, who knows? Maybe the actual response, after all the social media, all the Instagram posts, all the pictures of the automated robots, if after all the social media response, if people still prefer a face-to-face encounter when it comes to their pizza, this thing could not catch on, which is totally possible. But I also believe that, in times like the pandemic, this is something that, maybe this is the change that future generations demand. I believe the same company, Neuro, also worked with grocery delivery businesses that would deliver your groceries autonomously as well. Clearly, the industry is grasping and looking for, is this a viable business model at the current time? If it is quick, efficient, cheap, and fully autonomous, you don't need robots or, you don't need anyone to really oversee this thing, then yes, the answer is maybe. But if the economics of it just don't work out, then maybe in another 5 to 10 years, this idea will come up again. The idea is going to happen. It's just, is it now or is it in 10 years? Who knows? And by the way, let's see, Bridget, I like faceless pizza all the time. Yes, pizza that is fully automated, and trust me, we are fast approaching that day exactly when pizza and food in general is prepared by robots. We've already seen robo chefs, prepared by robots, delivered by robots, consumed by people. And honestly, in a world where we are fast approaching an 8 billion person population, that level of automation to start feeding people, I mean, there will never be a replacement for a human chef. But to be able to feed that many people and feed them effectively and economically, services like these are super important. And again, still on the cutting edge. We don't know where it actually all ends up. There you go. Okay, that was story number, what are we up to? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we're on story number 9. Let's see. We can talk about that. Okay, this one should be quick. Netflix. They are often known for filling up their catalog, and they're doing something that I really appreciate, because they could have been this company that when they first started out, no other platform had an online infrastructure really set up. Netflix was was DVDs in your mail. They launched their streaming service. They actually came on our show and, we talked to the guy that was in charge of that. When that first happened, I remember that interview, and he was like, well, this is experimental, and, we're going to try it and see how it works. Now, Netflix is synonymous with streaming. So they could have been this company when they first launched that they just provided the marketplace and the streaming platform for other people's content to be produced and broadcast to its audience. They took a different route, which again, I'm very happy that they did. They started producing their own content. They started producing TV shows that were mediocre. They started producing movies that were so-so. They started producing, they had some hits along the way that were incredible and great. And, the entire time they still wheeled and dealed and, tried to get some of the best shows out there. But yeah, they are producing their own content for better or worse. And this next one, I have a strong feeling it's probably going to be for worse. But you know what? I'm still going to watch it, because you got to admire that Netflix is taking the risk and trying to produce these movies and these shows. Netflix is working on a live-action Gundam movie. Gundam, if you don't know, it's and they mentioned that it's a live action Gundam movie, has been in the pipeline for several years and has taken a giant step closer to a screen near you, which, yeah, you can see an image here. I don't believe this is the actual Gundam. This is just one from Japan, but still. Netflix has snagged the worldwide rights to the film, except in China, where Legendary Pictures will release it in theaters. So Legendary and Gundam owner Sunrise have tapped John Voight Roberts, who directed Kong Skull Island and The Kings of Summer, to produce and direct the movie. So at least they have Kong Skull Island, someone who is very familiar with mixing live action with heavily CGI'd main characters. They said that Brian Vaughn, who is Y the Last Man, will write the script and act as executive producer. Beyond updates on the core directive team and the fact that it's coming to Netflix, details about the live-action Gundam movie remain, a little slim. And they said that there's also the small matter of the Metal Gear Solid picture that Voight Roberts is working on as well. So this isn't exactly the first live-action Gundam movie. G-Saviour was a made-for-TV film that had a theatrical release in Japan in 1999. It's a safe bet that the budget will be a bit higher around. I've actually never seen G-Saviour. That's Yeah, that's pretty funny that they already tried that in 1999. Meanwhile, Netflix is making a live-action adaptation of another Sunrise property, Cowboy Bebop. Cowboy Bebop, to many people who watch anime, is one of the best animes out there because it's drama, it's funny, it has a very good storyline. To try to adapt that to live action is going to be a very tall order in itself. And they mentioned, by the way, that the filming on the series wrapped up last month following lengthy delays due to COVID. So there you go. Now, they also mentioned that the show should hit Netflix later this year. Adapting anime to live action is always risky. You stand to alienate not only the people who like anime, but people who don't like anime. So you're really walking a fine line. And to Netflix, again, I don't think they really care about quality as much as quantity in a lot of cases. You hope that the quality is there. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But to Netflix, the real issue is more, hey, is it working? Yes or no? And hey, maybe. Okay. How about this one? We have time for one more story, and Facebook is finally doing something about fake likes. And yeah, it happens all over. This is something that when you look at social media and you see those people that have tons and tons of traction, a lot of it is fake. And it doesn't take a lot of, as I've seen on platforms like Reddit and the like, it doesn't take much fake traction to beget much more real traction. So Facebook removes over 16,000 groups trading fake reviews. And Facebook has removed more than 16,000 groups trading fake reviews after the UK's competition regulator criticized the company for failing to make good on a previous promise to clamp down on the practice. This is one of those things where, much like Twitter, you would hope that they would do this. But at the same time, it's not really on their radar because, hey, tens or hundreds or millions of engagement on their platform is a good thing for Facebook. So if they don't attack them or they don't take them down as aggressively as other things, that's not that big a deal because, hey, Facebook gets the engagement anyways. And then if they do take it down, they can say, well, we're weeding out bots and we're making our platform more authentic. So it's a win-win, leave it up or don't leave it up. It's not the most pressing issue one way or the other. But now, I guess with the UK's regulators, they're trying to make them a little bit more, focus on it a little bit more. So they mentioned that the practice in which unscrupulous traders buy fake positive reviews on e-commerce sites to boost sales or hit competitors with fraudulent negative reviews was frequently coordinated on Facebook and Instagram, as they have found. So if you've ever seen a product that, you look at the reviews, it's pretty darn good, and then you buy the product, it's complete crap, you go back and you look at the reviews, clearly they're faked, but they're good enough to pass the initial, is this worth buying? We saw this with an app for a crypto wallet that wasn't actually from the producer of the hardware crypto wallet, and you guaranteed that they purchased fake reviews to give it, a 4.7 rating. Even though the 1-star reviews are, this is a complete scam, the fake reviews were good enough to at least fool some people to initially check it out. Now, the chief executive of the Consumer Watch Group says that Facebook has a duty to do all it can do to stop the trading of such content on its platforms. After we intervened again, the company made significant changes, but it is still disappointing. It has taken them over a year to fix these issues. If there is an algorithm, people are going to try their best to trick it, to take the most advantage of it, to just get as much out of the algorithm as possible. And for these groups, especially the likes of, let's say, China. I've seen these instances of China where they have someone sitting there with dozens and dozens of phones in front of them. And whenever you pay for those likes, you pay for those clicks, you pay for that traffic, they sit there on those phones and, on 50 different phones, they're watching videos, they're hitting like, they're doing, whatever they're paid for. And, each finger is, maybe a penny here, a penny there. It's very, very cheap. But for, the individuals out there, hey, that one person can be, 100 views in a matter of seconds on a particular video, or 100 likes on a social media platform. It can get something trending on Twitter, and to Twitter, it's 100 people. But in reality, it's just one person hitting things on 100 phones. It's a big business. It's a big industry. It benefits social media. They're not going to aggressively monitor it, but at the same time, it deceives everyone on the platform every single day, and it does need looked at. So, good job to the CMA for taking Facebook to task. Facebook, they need to fix their problem. Yeah, it will always be a problem. Don't get me wrong. So everyone, that's all the time we have here for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for listening. If you can't catch us on IRN, catch us on the podcast. And until next time, everyone, computeramerica.com. We'll see you here next time. Have a good one. Bye-bye.